In this video, I'm going to show you how to install a PEX pipe. And if you're new to this channel, my name's Josh. This channel is all about DIY to save a ton of money. So be sure to subscribe, ring that bell so you get a notification every time I release a new video, and hammer that like button for me. That's all I ask in return for making this video. So we got a lot to go over today, so let's get started. If you're new to PEX pipe, there are two different types of PEX pipe, PEX type A and PEX type B. With PEX type A, you're going to need an expansion tool in order to make your connections, and it can be very expensive for the startup. I like to use PEX type B, and the reason why that is, the tool's relatively inexpensive, and your crimp rings are what's going to be used to make the connection, so you got a solid connection. So if you want to make any purchases to these tools in this video, I'll put a link in the description below so you can do that. So that's what I'm going to be doing in this video, is PEX type B. And if you've been following my video series on this garage, you'll know I ran 3/4 inch PEX pipe to my house, and this is 3/4 inch PEX pipe that's going to be used to feed this half bath outdoor kitchen, and I got an indoor sink. So let's get started. I'm right here outside of the bathroom, and right here is going to be utility sink, and then the drain you see in the background is for the outdoor kitchen. So that is where I got to make all of my connections. So with that being said, I got a water line going here for the toilet, and I got a hot and cold going here for this sink, a hot and cold for that sink, and a hot and cold for that sink. There are two different ways we can get to these fixtures. One, we can go from up above and then go down to each fixture using 1/2 inch from the 3/4 inch line, or we can go through these studs and then just branch off to each fixture that way. So I'm going to be going through these studs primarily because there's less pipe distance, so your hot's going to get hotter quicker because we're already coming clear from the house with the hot water, so it's going to take a while to get hot water if we need it. And two, it is going to save a little bit on pipe in general. Now there's another option that you can do. You can do what's called a manifold system, where you run your 3/4 inch line into a manifold and then you branch out from there with individual 1/2 inch lines. I don't like to use that method. I like to use the trunk and branch method. So we're going to have a 3/4 inch trunk and branching off with the 1/2 inch lines. I'm first going to begin by drilling out the studs to house these 3/4 inch pipes. So if we take a measurement, as you can see, the thickness of the pipe from outside diameter is about 1 inch. So if I was going straight through a floor or something where it was a straight run, I would use a 1 inch drill bit. But because I'm going through all of these studs, I'm going to make sure I have a little more room. So I'm going to be using an 1.25 inch drill bit to drill out for this PEX pipe. So that's something to think about versus going through a straight floor. Because I don't want the hot and cold water lines touching inside of the walls, I'm going to keep them spaced out about 4 inches. I'm going to drill a hole at 20 inches and one at 24. The cold's going to be at the bottom and the hot's going to be at the top. So I'm going to mark and drill out all the studs first. I'm now going to take my speed square just to mark the center of the stud. Now some places I might have to offset a little bit because of things like conduit or the drain lines. So for the most part, I'm going to be going towards the center. The tool that I'm going to be using to cut the pipe is a ratchet pipe cutter, and to use it you just open it up by pulling back on the handle, clamp down on the pipe, and then you ratchet it shut, and then that's going to cut the pipe. Very easy to use. I highly recommend a ratchet pipe cutter for PEX pipe. I'm going to begin by cutting the pipe off to the correct height to go into the holes that we drilled. And again, this is running into the crawl space from here to my house. So obviously I went through the slab under the ground to the house, and I did make a video on that. You can check out the video in the top right hand corner of the screen if you want to watch it. So the first thing I need to do is know my height. So like I said, I want the cold water on the bottom, so that needs to be 20 inches to the elbow where it comes out towards those holes, and then 24 for the hot water. So I'm going to measure right off the floor to the 20-inch mark. So right there. Now I'm just going to mark it to where the pipe's going to end right here at that elbow. And now 24 for this hot water. And we can hold this up So right there looks good. So I'll mark that. I'm going to cut those pipes off at those marks. Get these out of the way. I'm first going to take a 3/4 inch copper crimp ring and I'm going to slide it right over the PEX pipe like so. And then I'm going to take a 3/4 by 3/4 elbow like I showed you a second ago. And I'm going to slide it right into that PEX pipe like so. Make sure we're down all the way. And what I like to do is hold this copper ring about 1/8 from the end of that pipe. Take a pair of needle nose to crimp down on it just to get it started. If not, it'll be sliding around the pipe as you're trying to crimp it. So about right there. And then put pressure on it so it holds it. And obviously face it towards the direction you want to go. And now I'm going to take my crimping tool and use the 3/4 inch hole to crimp over that ring. So very simple. We just slide it right over the ring. Make sure we're in the center of the tool, about right there. And now we're going to squeeze it tight. And after it locks, it crimped that ring down to seal around that elbow. And then we're going to take it off. And now I'm just going to check each crimp with a go and no-go tool. This side is the go gauge, so if it goes over it, it means we're good to go. And it looks good. Now this is the no-go side, and it's going to stop just after a little bit of distance over that ring, and that is the no-go side, so obviously we are good to go. And now I'm going to do the same to this pipe below. All right, now I'm going to fish 3/4 inch pipe over to these elbows through the studs. I'm now going to make these connections. Now we've got a good start coming up out of the floor. And now I got to cut these pipes in order to angle towards this wall with an elbow. So we're right here at a corner of a wall. And now if we take a look, if we eyeball about right through that hole, it looks like this pipe needs cut off right there. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that with my pencil. And I'm going to do the same to the cold side. Take my ratchet pipe cutter and cut that off. And now, because we're in a tight corner here, I cannot put the elbow on here first because I can't crimp it in here. And that's one drawback to PEX, is putting it in tight spaces like this. In order to get your crimping tool in, you obviously can't get in here like so. So I'm going to have to fish my PEX pipe through here first, put my elbow on, then put the elbow into here, then crimp it on. I'm now going to install the elbows on these two pipes. I now got to get these elbows into these pipes. All right, we are now angled going towards the other wall. I'm now here at the sink for the bathroom, and I'm going to use what's called a reducing tee, 3/4 to 1/2 inch. This is what the bag looks like. And I'm going to stay 4 inches to the left and to the right of the drain that's here for the sink. We're going to put these in line now. In order to install these, very simple, right here is the center of the drain. And I'm going to measure over 4 inches from the center of the drain and then hold my fitting right where I want it to be installed. And now I'm going to mark the pipe where it needs cut, so right there. And then on the other side, same thing, come over 4 inches, hold it where I need it, and then mark where I need to cut the pipe and install them right there. And something important to note here, whenever you're looking at your sink, you want your hot on the left, cold on the right. So that is just standard plumbing. And we're going to crimp this on so that this 1/2 inch part is facing at the sink. And now when it comes to finishing up this hot water line, it's going to a corner, so I got to pre-cut the length and put the elbow on first before I install it on here. I don't have to worry about pre-cutting the cold water line yet because I got to hit the toilet supply line first. But this hot water line I do because we've got to come through this wall and angle that way. So I'm going to fish this through this wall first. I'm now going to hook it to this fitting now, but I'm not going to install it yet. I'm just going to place it together. Now I'm going to come back over here. I'm now just going to take an elbow, hold it up as if it was going to get through this wall to get my length. So I'm going to hold it right here. And it looks like I need to cut it right there. All right, now I'm going to slide it out and cut and install the fitting right here first. Now I can connect this hot line to the last fitting we just installed. I'm now going to fish the cold water line through the wall just like we did the hot, except we're going to cut it off here for our toilet supply line. Here is the pipe going down through the concrete for my toilet. Here's the water line we just placed in, and here's my vent going down through the concrete and up to the roof. So I got to hold over 6 inches to the left from my toilet flange to where it's ultimately going to be installed. So if I measure off the floor, I got 16 inches from this wall to the center of this pipe. So I got to come over 10 inches. All I got to do is subtract 6, which will give me 6 inches away to the left of this pipe. And I got to mark this right here. So again, this is going to be the center of our fitting. And now when we install this one, we got to point it down because I got to go down, then angle out for my toilet supply line. I'm going to hold this up here like so. Right here's that mark. So I'm going to make sure I cut this right here in order to give me the right distance. So I'm going to cut this off now. I'm now going to put a crimp ring on and install my fitting facing down. And I'm now going to temporarily slide this over so I can pre-cut this length for that corner. Again, same idea. Hold this elbow up to where it's going to go through that hole. Another thing you can do too is slide a piece of scrap pipe through here, and wherever they lace over each other, you know exactly where they cross. But this always worked well for me. So I'm going to hold it up right there and then mark the pipe. Now I'm going to cut it and install this elbow. All right, I'm now going to fish that back over to that fitting and just finish making the connection onto that toilet supply line area. Make sure you line it up with that hole before you crimp it. And as you can see, it's lined up with the hole really well. And now for the rest of this, I'm going to follow the same processes that I just showed you until we get past this drain. I'm now past the utility sink. We only got one more fixture, and that's the outdoor kitchen sink to address. So now I'm going to branch down from the 3/4 inch pipe to 1/2 inch, and I'm going to do that using this reducer. And this is a 3/4 to 1/2 inch reducing coupling. So I'm going to install this here and then continue my run using the 1/2 inch till I get to the outdoor kitchen. Now when I continue the rest of this PEX pipe, I'm going to go in behind this landing so I can cover up and hide my pipe, and then I'm going to enter into the wall here in the background. I'm now switching to the 1/2 inch pipe. These are the 1/2 inch elbows right here, and you'll notice there's pink labeling. That's to indicate that it's 1/2 inch stuff. And you can order this stuff from my Amazon store as well. This is in fact where all this stuff came from. But all I'm going to do now is put all my elbows in and dry fit it and then cut it to length here. And how all of this stuff installs is just the same as it was before, except when we crimp with this, we use this upper part that is for the 1/2 inch. And also when we use the go and no-go gauge, we're going to use this center slot, the 1/2 inch go, 1/2 inch no-go right here to test it. Now we're good to go and keep running it just like we would any other PEX. A couple things here for this outdoor kitchen wall. First thing I'd like to point out, as you can see, I drilled the holes here towards the end of the 2x6 instead of the center. That's because there's going to be insulation here, and it's more likely that you won't have any freezing issues if you're on the more inside of this exterior wall. And I'm actually going to put nailing plates over where each pipe is, so that way a screw won't hit when I'm installing drywall. And another thing I'm going to point out, I'm not going to put an elbow back here where I twist and come into here, because I can just bend this PEX pipe in order to make a comfortable bend underneath of this landing and to make my elbow. So I'm going to go ahead and run this through here, then show you what it looks like underneath the steps. I would like for you to note that it is best practice not to put water lines in exterior walls, but in this case I almost had to because the outdoor kitchen is located on the exterior wall. As you can see from underneath, we got our PEX pipe, and it has a nice comfortable angle right out through the landing's face, and that looks really good. I'm now going to work on the water supply line going to the toilet, and like I already said, it's going to be 6 inches to the left of the toilet, and also I need to be 6 inches up off the ground to the center to where it elbows out. So with that being said, if we take a measurement, 6 inches right up off the floor is just a few inches above this plate. So I'm just going to place this 3/4 board back into the wall like so in order to give me a place to anchor my pipe. I now got a piece of PEX pipe cut to where when I have an elbow installed on it, it's going to put me 6 inches above the floor. So as you can see, it's exactly 6 inches up off the floor. So I'm going to go ahead and put this together and then stub a piece out for my pipe water supply for the toilet. And I'm now going to put a piece that's going to stick out at least 6 inches. And I'm now going to install a plug on the end of this pipe because I'm going to pressure test everything here after it's done. So I need to plug it off. I'm now going to use a 1/2 inch pipe clamp to clamp this to hold it in place so it's positioned correctly. And if you remember right, it's 10 inches from the wall. I'm not going to drive that in all the way because I got this vent pipe in the back here. I don't want to go through and hit it. So that's all there is to the toilet. I'm now here at the bathroom sink. As you can see, I got 6 or 8 inch pieces of pipe that's going to stub out to connect to the water lines eventually. And I got them capped off because I got to pressure test the system. So I'm going to place these onto the PEX piping. I'm here where the utility sink's going to be, and I'm going to do something a little different here. I'm first going to install my stub outs just like I typically would. And sometimes I will have to pivot these just like you just seen me do in order to get the crimp rings on, just so you know. And now I'm going to put a pressure gauge on this side, and it's just a Sharkbite fitting here. So it's going to slide right over that PEX. And then I got a valve stem that's hooked to a Sharkbite fitting as well. And I'm going to place this over here so we can pressure test our system. Before I go any further, I got to install 2 frost-free Sillcocks that's going to go through the wall that's going to supply my outdoor kitchen with hot and cold water. Now these are only 4 inches long, and that's so they can be placed inside a 2x6 wall without having it stick past the inside, which is very important to me. So I'm going to install this here on this wall, but first I'm going to put a PVC board in order to place these, so that way when I install the steel wall, it can be trimmed out correctly. This is the drain pipe that I installed in my last video, and if you want to check that out, I'll put a link in the description below. But I cut another board that's going to be placed right beside it that's going to be for the water. And just so you know, in a typical kitchen, you would obviously put hot and cold on the left and right side. But with this case, I'm going to place the hot and cold here because I'm going to have plenty of room to install the water lines in this case. So I'm just going to place it right beside this board and then shoot it on using a trim nailer. I'm first going to find the center, then place the water spigots about 4 inches apart. So we're going to place the hot on the left here, then the cold on the right here. I'm now going to use a 1-inch drill bit to drill these out. And just so you know, you want to slope these slightly upward because the Sillcock actually is going to be installed with a slight slope. So when I drill this out, I'm going to angle it up slightly. Ultimately, when the spigot is installed through the wall, you want it to slope downwards like I mentioned earlier. So there are a couple methods to do so. One method is just use the piece that came with it. It's plastic, it's tapered. So whenever it's installed, it's going to press against the wall down below and up here in order to slope it. Or another method to use is simply just take a piece of PVC shim and place right behind it, so whenever you screw it to the wall, it's going to automatically tilt it like so. So I'm going to show you both methods. The best ones obviously is to use the piece that came with it, but we're just going to clip that right on to the spigot, and then we're going to place it right through the wall like so. And then whenever we tighten it down, it's going to angle up. I'm now just going to use a construction screw or a decking screw and place it through each side of the spigot. Now that this one's secured, I'm going to install the one here beside it, except this time I'm going to place this shim right behind it in order to tilt it up like so, and then we will trim that off after we get the screws through it. And now I'm just going to take my utility knife and trim this shim. So as you can see, kind of the same result. All you got to do is just make sure there's a gap here and it's tight at the bottom in order to cause it to angle up. And now we got to go on the inside to make our connections. Here I am on the inside of the building. As you can see, we got male ends on each end of the frost-free Sillcock. This is the fitting that I'm going to use to finish the other end of the Sillcock. So with that being said, this is going to accept a female threaded end like so, and I got my PEX end on this, and this is 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch, and you can install 3/4 inch here if you're going to be using this for like a water hose or whatnot, but since these are for sinks, 1/2 inch is plenty. In order to make my hot water connection that's going to be to this one, we're going to come straight through the wall like so. So I'm just going to come right over towards this stud and drill the hole out to make the connection. And now for the cold, we're going to come down a little lower, and I can either come real low and bend it right up into this spigot, but I'm actually going to come over just about a comfortable height, then elbow right up to it. So either way is fine. So I'm going to go ahead and drill out these holes. I'm going to install this adapter at a simple 90° towards the water line. Then I'm going to install this adapter facing down like so. And in order to make my connections, I'm first going to use standard Teflon tape and wrap in a clockwise fashion on each one. I did 5 wraps around, and do the same here. And now what I'm going to use is what's called Great White Joint Compound, and this is also called pipe dope, either one. A lot of people use them interchangeably, but I'm just going to put a little bit for these threads because it acts as a lubricant to tighten down the threads easier, and it also acts as more Teflon to seal. So I like to use a little bit of this with each connection. So I like to use tape and the pipe dope. And I'm now just going to take the elbow adapter and go ahead and thread it right on to the Sillcock. And I want this to tighten all the way down where it's pointing this way. I'm just going to use my crescent wrench in order to do that. So we'll stop about right there and do this one. And that looks good right there. I'm now going to simply cut my pipe to length and install them to each fitting. Again, hot's going to be on the left from the outside, and then cold's on the right. All right, all my connections are done here. So how these work while they're frost free is whenever they are turned off from the outside, they seal off clear back here. And then because of the slope going towards the outside, it drains to the outside. That's why you can't leave water hoses or whatnot hooked to these in the winter time, because they will freeze, because if you shut that off, the water can't drain out of here and it'll freeze. So that's all done here. Now let's head into the crawl space. I'm now here in the crawl space, and if you remember from my sub panel video, right here is where that wire came through going up to the junction box. And then right here is the hot and cold water lines that we were addressing over in the garage. So what I gotta do now is elbow up and then connect the water pipes together in order to be able to pressure test the system. So before I put any shut-off valves or anything on this, I'm gonna go up and connect them together. So I'm just gonna elbow up from here. I'm now just going to take a couple of 2-foot pieces and connect them to the elbows. I'm now going to take this 3-inch piece of pipe and take 2 elbows. These are old elbows. This one's actually one of those plastic ones. This is a brass one. But I'm going to actually put these elbows together going off each end of the pipe. I'm now going to take the ends of the pipes that are connected where they elbowed up and then use this piece to get them placed together. Now as you can see, our hot and cold water lines are tied in together using that piece, and now it's going to allow us to pressure test the hot and cold at the same time before we hook up to our 3/4 water lines in the house to make sure there's no leaks. I'm back here where the utility sink connections are, and if you remember correctly, I put the valve stem here on the cold side, and then I put the pressure gauge here on the hot side, and like we just did is connected both sides in the crawl space, so they're both connected. So it could be either side, it doesn't matter which side the gauge your valve stem's on. And now I'm going to take 100 PSI and place into the system using an air compressor, and then I got my connection here to get the air into the system. And it's always a good idea to put safety glasses on here, just because when you're using 100 PSI in these lines, if something pops off and there's something that's flying, you want to protect your eyes. All right, as you can see, we're at 100 PSI. So I'm going to take this off, and I like to let it set overnight in order to give me a good test. Now these pressure lines have been sitting well beyond 24 hours. It's actually been 4 days since I checked these lines because I had other projects to do, but let's check out the gauge and see if it dropped. After sitting for 4 days, as you can see, we're still hovering around the 100 PSI. And just so you know, temperature changes can fluctuate the PSI here. So if it's been sitting that long and it's up and down a couple PSI, that is why, but we're good to go. So now let's connect everything in the crawl space. Before I cut into the water lines that we just installed, I'm first going to release the pressure by opening the Sillcock that we installed for the outdoor kitchen. I'm here where the water enters into the house is the main supply, and right here's the main shutoff. I'm going to go ahead and cut this off, so now we don't have water going to the system. And also, I made a video installing PEX in this whole house, so check out the video in the top right hand corner of the screen, or there's going to be a link in the description below. In order to relieve pressure from the system, I'm now going to open up the water valve out here at the outside spigot. And as you can see, the pressure is released and we don't have any flow into the house, so we can work on the water lines. I'm now here where we tied together the hot and cold of the 3/4 water lines coming from the garage, and I'm inside the crawl space of my house. And I'm now going to cut off these lines and install what are called 3/4 inch shutoff valves. And they look like this, and I'm going to make sure I install them to where they are turned off and facing with the lettering so we can read it while we're actually here standing beside or sitting beside the water lines. And I'm going to do this and keep them off until the building's complete and we're installing the sinks and whatnot. So I don't want water out there right now because it's coming into the cold season, and if there's water out there, it has a potential of freezing, so we don't want to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and install these in line before I tie it into the water lines in the house. Here's the cold water shutoff valve that we just installed, and right here we got lucky. We got a cold water line directly above it, so we can simply just splice in right here inside of the main water supply down to that shutoff valve we just installed. And what I do have is a bucket, I'm placing this underneath of it when I cut to catch any water, so it doesn't go into crawl space, which it shouldn't be too much water. I'm now going to install a 3/4 inch tee so we can tee off down to the garage. And I now got to cut a piece of pipe to connect the two together. So I'm going to go ahead and dry fit it on and then cut it to length. All right, and as you can see, the beauty of this PEX is you can put the fittings together even while they're wet. So that is a huge benefit to PEX. So now I'm going to address the hot water line. And now for the hot, I'm going to have to elbow over to catch it downstream here. So I'm just going to put a piece on and then elbow up in the floor joist and head towards that water line. I'm now going to use 3/4 inch half clamps in order to secure the water lines to the bottom of the floor joist to hold them into place. Here's the water line coming over from where we just elbowed up. Here's the existing water line in the house. I'm going to splice right here to connect it with a T. I would like for you to leave a comment below and let me know if you have ever had to tie into the main water supply lines like you have seen here in this video. And also check out my memberships. I'll put a link to them in the description below, but there you can find some exclusive content and many other perks. All right, we are now spliced in and all of our connections are made, and we're going to turn the water back on. I'm now back here at the main shutoff and I'm going to turn the water back on, and I hear the water going back into the system. I'm now going to inspect all the joints that we made ever since we started installing all the new water lines inside the house, and we're going to start from down here and inspect all of them clear back to the very last joint. And looks like we're good to go. Now that I'm done pressure testing the system and have everything installed roughly until the final, I'm going to remove this valve stem and this pressure gauge using my Sharkbite removal tool. In order to use this, as you can see, we got a blunt side here, then a rounded over side here. I'm just going to take the blunt side and face it towards the fitting, and then we're going to compress the fitting itself and then pull, and it pops it right off. And now I'm just going to take a plug in order to keep debris out of the pipe, so I'm going to pop that right into place. I'm not going to crimp it because there's really no reason to. Anywhere where the water lines are not center of the stud and they're close to the outside where the drywall is going, or if they're towards where the siding's going, you got to worry about nails penetrating the stud and hitting the water line, or this even goes for electrical as well. You want to put these nail stoppers here so that way there's a shield from penetrating into that water line, which is very important. These just stick onto the wood, and then we take a hammer and just tap them on. And these are code in all areas that I'm aware of. Something else that's really cool about PEX is you can actually reuse these elbows and stuff that you didn't have to keep in line. All we got to do is first cut the pipe off flush with the fitting. So about right here, and then this side. So as you can see, we're still a little ways from the fitting, but that's good. And now we're going to use this copper crimp ring removal tool. So this one's for the copper crimp rings that we used. And all we got to do is slide it into the fitting like so. And then it's going to actually break that fitting by placing pressure on it. Watch this. So it snapped it, and I'm going to do this one. So it goes just deep enough to where it doesn't hurt the fitting, but it breaks the copper crimp ring. And now I'm just going to take my utility knife to finish off cutting through the PEX. Now you can either twist off the crimp ring with a pair of needle nose, or you can just cut the other side and break off the crimp ring like so. And now we simply just take our needle nose and pull off the PEX. And we do the same here. Now we can reuse this fitting as well. Pretty cool. If you'd like to see how I installed all the PEX in that house, check out this video. It'll help you out.